Welcome to today's video. In this video, we're going to talk about the inverse of a function. Now, we're going to outlines right here. We're going to solve the inverse of a function, other ordinary function, under fraction, and using quadratic equation. Now, the inverse of a function is a function that undoes the operation of f. It undoes the operation of f. And you should also take note of this, that the inverse of a function exists if and only if that function is bijective. What do I mean by bijective? Before we go further, that we have three types of functions: the injective, the subjective, and the bijective. The injective is also known as the one-to-one function. Then we talk about the injective is known as a one-to-one function. The subjective is the onto function, while the bijective consists of both injective and subjective. So for a function to have an inverse, it must be a bijective function. An inverse of a function is denoted using f prime of x. The inverse of a function is denoted by using f prime of x. Now we're going to solve some examples on how to solve the inverse of a function. Now let's take note of these examples. Now the first example is under ordinary function. So let's start with this. Given a function 2x minus 5. Now we're being asked to solve the inverse of this function. Now f of x of a function. Now we start by saying let f of x be let's use a value, okay, let's say y. Let f of x be y. That's to say this will become y is equal to what? 2x minus 5. So we can continue by saying we take like terms, which is to say x has to stay on its own, then y will be with the number. So here will become y. When a minus sign causes an equal, so it changes to plus, so it becomes y plus 5 is equal to 2x. Now making x the subject of formula right here, will become x is equal to y plus 5 over 2. So therefore, now we're going to rewrite, then you say rewrite y as what? X. So now this so therefore the inverse of this function is equal to what? X plus 5 over 2. It's as easy as this. This is how you solve the inverse of a function, ordinary function. When you have a straight function given like this, you first of all you rewrite f of x to be any letters, any alphabet you wish to use, but in this case we're making use of y. Now we're going to solve the next one under fraction. When you are given a question and the question is under fraction, then how do you solve the inverse of a function under fraction? Let's take another example. Now we're going to take another example, which is the question is giving us f of x is equal to minus 2x plus 7 over x. Now there's a question. Now I want to look for the inverse of a function under this question. Okay, now the first thing we do is just say let f of x be y. Let's make use of y. So therefore this will be y is equal to 2 minus 2x plus 7 all over x. So we cross multiply. So here will become xy equal to minus 2x plus 7. Then collect like terms, so it becomes xy plus 2x or equal to what? 7. Now, if you take a look at this equation right here, there's something common between this and this, which is what? X. So what do? We factorize in this situation. What is common between these two is what? x. So we can easily write this as what? Y. Okay. We said x is common between these two functions. So it will become x or into y plus 2 all equal to what? 7. Make x a subject here. X is equal to what? 7 over y plus 2. So, therefore, you rewrite your y as what? X. So, therefore, f inverse of x is equal to 7 all into x plus 2 under fraction. This is how you solve it under fraction. Now we're going to take the next example. Now before we go into the next example, please, you need to be careful when solving this. Very careful when, especially in your sign, because sign at times can be so confusing. So you need to be very careful about your sign and about when collecting your like terms. Make sure they are like, make sure they have something in common before you go on, before you continue solving. Now, this is the inverse of a function under fraction. Now, we're going to the next one, which is the inverse of a function under quadratic equation. How do we solve it under quadratic equation? What we do, we replace f of x, or we rewrite f of x as y. So when it is written as y, our equation turns to x squared plus 2x minus 3. Then we interchange the rules of both x and y. That is to say, wherever you see your y, you put x, and wherever you see x, you put y. So under it, we have this. So when we get up to this point, what we need to do is using completing the square method. So by using the completing the square method, let's write it out. We have x is equal to y squared plus 2y equals to 3. Understand? When we take collect like terms in this part, we collect like terms in this part. So when we collect like terms, 3 have to stay on its own, so we equate it to 3. So now when we get to this point, what we need to do here is you take half of the coefficient of y, then you square it, then add it to both sides. Now what the coefficient of y here is 2. So taking the half of 2, what do we have? When you get the answer, then you square it and add it to both sides. Now taking the half of the coefficient of y, so here becomes y squared plus 2y plus the coefficient of y is 2. So taking the half of 2 of this, then you square it, then add them to both sides. So this is it. So therefore, 2 divided by 2 is 1. 1 square is 1. So we're going to have y squared plus 2y plus 1 equal to 3 plus 1. So this can be written as y plus 1 all square. When we factorize, this is what we're going to have is equal to 4. So remember, this was equal to x, so we have x is equal to y plus 1 all square. Remember, there's a plus here, so when we take it back, it changes to minus 4. So let x be in one place and y be in one side. So we have x plus 4 is equal to y plus 1 all square. So what we do next, we take the square roots of both sides. So taking the square root of both sides, we are going to have plus minus x plus 4 all square into y plus 1 all square, like this. So this we can't go with this, we take this out, so we are going to have plus minus x plus 4. You can still write it in a root form, is equal to y plus 1. So we want y to stay on its own, so we take y this way. We have minus 1. When a plus crosses an equal to, it changes to minus. So we have minus 1 plus minus the root of x plus 4, which is equal to y. Now we write we write y as what? X. So therefore our inverse of this function is equal to -1 plus the root of x plus 4, or the inverse of this equal to -1 minus the root of x plus 4. So therefore this is the inverse of this quadratic function.